It's Monday, and I'd like to welcome you back to season number 4 of the Joust About Careers podcast. As always, this is the place to learn about careers from the people who are actually in the trenches every day. I'm your host, Brian Bret, and I want to see all people make good career and life decisions. My guest today is Bret Nye, the community editor for the Courier, the daily newspaper of Findlay, Ohio. Bret shares about the decision he had to make regarding whether to pursue journalism or a writing and teaching career, the positive and negative aspects of journalism, and much more. Whether you're interested in a career as a writer or journalist, or are still exploring your career options, I hope that what Bret shares today will help all of you make better career decisions and have fulfilling career journeys. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to season number 4 of the Joust About Careers podcast, where we focus on careers and the people that are in those careers and how they arrived at where they are today. And this week we have 2007 Van Buren graduate Bret Nye with us, and he's going to be talking about his career as the community editor at the Courier here in Findlay. So Bret, thank you very much for joining us and being willing to talk about your career. And to get started, I'd like to just hear, what do you do on a daily basis as a career editor, if there's a typical day for you? And if there's not a typical day, what does a typical week look like?
Well, thanks for inviting me to come in and talk. It was very exciting. Congratulations on the 4th season of this too. I've seen a couple of these. They're really cool. So one of the, and for me, perks of being the community editor at the Courier is that, there is definitely not a typical day. Basically, the main task is I'm kind of managing the newsroom, managing anything that gets to our website or print paper in some capacity. So obviously we have a team of reporters that are out covering things, providing information, writing features about people or projects happening in the area. And then I will copy edit stuff, and I'll prepare it for the website and for the print paper. We still print 6 days a week here in Findlay, which is less and less common. But we're still able to print quite a bit, the Courier, which is nice. As to what happens, if there might be breaking news that I'll need to sort of captain as we go, there could be events will come up that we'll need to make sure to get to and handle. Lots of phone calls of every imaginable variety, from news tips to something that happened 30 years ago. Can you find it in your archives? I mean, it's just it's all over the place. But if excitement and just kind of having a different day every day is of interest to you, like it is to me, then this is a pretty good position. So community editor, you used to call it, it's sort of like managing editor. It's like I said, kind of leading the charges with news, and sports, basically, although I don't do as much actual sports writing or editing or anything. But essentially just making sure that, every day, by the end of the night, we've got a newspaper in the morning with things in it to read. So
Okay. So when you think about your time as a writer, because you were a writer for the Advertiser Tribune in Tiffin, what did that look like for you? Were you spending all day in front of a computer? Were you part of the day with a computer and part of the day out interviewing people? How did that work?
So definitely more time in front of the computer as an editor, in which the main thrust of this kind of position, I think, whether you're doing newspaper editing or any other type of publication, print or otherwise, you're working with copy and with stories that have been written by someone else first, and you're also helping them devise it, you're helping them develop it. But a lot more office time here. As a reporter, that's when, the idea is you don't want to be seen in the office all day. You definitely need to be out there talking to people, taking photos of things, covering stuff as it comes up in the area. So that's a reporting. at any that's a pretty on the go sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah.
When you were in high school, is this the career path you thought you would go down, or what were you thinking when you were in high school?
It's hard to dial back into that version of Bret, but um, there was an inkling for sure. It was when I was in high school. I knew that I loved writing, and then the question, and I mean honestly, the question for your whole life, your career, if that's what you love to do, is how do you make a day-to-day career? How do you make a life out of that? How do you support yourself? And you want to have a family someday or whatever. How do you do that? I had thought pretty early on about journalism specifically. The other option maybe was more creative writing. And so I did a little bit of both in college then. So I interned I went to Wittenberg in Springfield, Ohio. Um, I interned at the Springfield News Sun, their newspaper there. Ended up going the other way out of college, though. I went to grad school for creative writing. So I was doing like fiction and creative nonfiction, different stuff like that. Thought I would be an academic. And it just that sort of the way that life looked was less and less appealing over time. I kind of want to, the more time you spend in school, some people would want to be students forever, and I thought I did, but then you hit a point when you kind of you want to get working, you want to start doing stuff every day. So so then journalism sort of took over then, but there was an inkling, didn't know that I would for sure be down this path, but
As you think about those educational experiences, you also then went to the University of Miami or Miami University to get your master's degree, went to Notre Dame, earned a Master of Fine Arts. Like you said, you were thinking that education was going to be the way that you would go. So basically, you needed all of those degrees in order to become a college professor. And you did teach, you worked as an adjunct professor at George Mason and Northern Virginia Community College, and you did that simultaneously. So yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit about just what was it like being a college professor, and what was it like teaching at two different schools at the same time, and maybe defining what is an adjunct professor versus a different kind of professor.
Well, I have to say, I really loved doing that, honestly. So the path that I first took, like I said, I kind of had creative writing on one side. I knew I really loved that. I've always been a big reader. Loved English class. I still remember English class with Mr. Bret here. And always journalism was the other side. So first I picked creative writing. So if you want to, the thing is, anybody can be a creative writer. It doesn't matter what you do. If you find a way to carve out time in your life to write a novel idea you've got, or you like to write short stories or poems, anybody can do it. Anybody can publish. Now, if you want to make a career out of it, a pretty common way to try to do that is to look into education for sure. So the first program I did at Miami in Oxford, Ohio, was just a Master of Arts. So I was specifically focused on fiction writing, basically. So it was very similar to the same work that I ended up doing at Notre Dame, the Master of Fine Arts. The degree is technically different, but honestly, it's the same work, really. They're different colleges will just kind of set up their creative writing graduate programs a little differently, basically. So at Miami, they wanted it to be an MA. Again, the work was extremely similar. I guess probably the degree looks a little different when you get down the line towards maybe getting a job. But the reason that I ended up doing both of those was just because I wanted more time, and I would say I needed more time to kind of find my voice as a creative writer and kind of work on, and I had the option to maybe spend a little more time working on like the craft of writing, in creative writing specifically. There's another creative writing degree out there. You can do a PhD. It's pretty common nowadays. There's a program for that at like the University of Cincinnati. There aren't as nearly as many as you'll find Master of Fine Arts programs or Master of Arts programs in creative writing. But generally, the path for a lot of people and a lot of my colleagues and friends in that world would be you would do either an MA or MFA, and then you would actually go to a PhD. If you knew that you wanted to teach at a college level and you wanted to try to make a life out of teaching creative writing classes to students and also getting to spend time writing on the side. So that's what I thought I would do. Again, it's a very difficult, it's a difficult career path. It requires pretty extensive publication. And as the years go on too, I think that a lot of university faculties, they don't have as much space for professors of creative writing as they might once have had. I don't know that they've ever had a lot of space for it really, but some universities, bigger universities, their programs are more robust than others, but it could be a tough path. So that's how I wound up adjuncting.
Right.
While I was a grad student, what I was doing to earn my stipend at every turn was I was teaching courses. So from 2000, I guess it would be 2011 on, was adjunct, which means you are teaching classes, but you are technically part-time faculty. That's what adjunct means. You're not a sort of official staple part of the faculty of the department, but you're teaching similar classes. You have all the kind of support and resources that you otherwise would have at the university, and you'll rub elbows with what they, visiting or assistant professors who are full-time faculty in those departments. But the class that I actually I taught a few creative writing classes, and I taught like a fiction workshop class in Bowling Green. Most recently, I was adjuncting at Bowling Green before I got into the newspaper world. But actually, a lot of the stuff I was teaching was composition. So that's what you would. It's not so common to have a full composition class in high school around here, but whoever, I don't know if I can speak to the students, you are doing that kind of work already in your English class. It's learning how to research and write essays about research. It's learning how to make an argument when you're writing about something, or be persuasive and use different rhetorical modes and things. And we just get a little more deeply into that in those classes, the composition classes, to help prepare you. You'll usually take them in your first year. Maybe there'll be a second class within your second year, but almost every larger university for sure, you will take, and any that has any kind of liberal arts leaning, you will take that kind of class. You may have tested out of it with college credit stuff, or that would be a pretty common college credit class to take too. But those were the bulk of the stuff that I taught. Okay. And I really loved it. But yeah, teaching kind of the craft of academic writing, research and argumentative writing was the main thing. I also taught some that were specific to different majors. So when I was at George Mason, lots of finance, business, economics students there. So I taught a couple of, I guess you call them business leaning composition classes. I have very little to no business acumen myself, but thankfully I didn't need that, because the idea was the students, the research they wanted to do was their own projects or something that lent itself to learning about things in their own major and that they were going to work on in their other classes. But here, it's just the fundamentals of how do you know what a good source is? How do you find academics? How do you find advanced research? And going well beyond, just doing your Google search and trying to decide if this is trustworthy or not,
Right.
that kind of
Right.
thing. But even just learning to use a university library, the web and print resources it's a pretty big task at first for those people who will go to a larger university. There's all kinds of stuff that you have available to you that you don't necessarily know about until you get into a class like that. So
I think it's interesting though how, everything that you've done over the course of your career, it has involved writing. And it just
yeah.
again shows that there's that process throughout developing a career and moving from one place to another, one
Mhm.
job to another. But a lot of times there are ways that those jobs interconnect with each other and build on each other and have brought
Yeah.
you to where you are today. So I think that's always important to remember. And I like hearing stories like yours where we can really clearly see that.
Mhm.
So as we think about your current position in journalism,
Mhm.
what are some of the best aspects of being a journalist and working in journalism?
The best thing about being a journalist is knowing that no matter the scale that you're working at, whether it's at the New York Times or um, a smaller paper like the Review Times in Fostoria, which I also collaborate with because we are owned by the same company. You know that the work that you're doing is it's helpful to people. It is either giving them information that they need or want, or it is illuminating something in a way that will, kind of make people think a little differently about how the systems, local political governmental systems work. Thinking about how maybe even greater state or national education systems work and political systems, things like that. Or even if it's a profile on a local person that's doing something really interesting with their life, you're not so much doing the the kind of investigative thing at that point. But for me, it's kind of illuminating a person's life and helping them to tell their story in a way that they might not be able to do otherwise. I mean, everybody has access to Facebook and Twitter and probably many newer things that I don't know as much about. But it's different for someone to just kind of blurt out what happened to them that day or what they're doing. It's another to kind of work with a person and craft their story and kind of put it in a way that is understandable and very palatable for a larger amount of readers. Yeah, so the behind everything, behind the day to day, the thing that you're doing is a helpful kind of productive thing for society, basically. So that's the best
Right.
part of journalism work at any level. So,
I think about, just the historical record of this is
yeah,
what happened in Findlay, Ohio on August 24th of 2023.
that too. Yeah.
Our memories are not that good. We think they are, but they aren't. And, we can look back and we can see these things. And like you said, the perspectives of that time versus today and so forth. So on the other end of the spectrum is the area or are the areas that maybe aren't that appealing about journalism? Are there a few things that people who are thinking about going into journalism should know before they take the leap?
I would say there's probably two main things to keep in mind about the industry right now. The one thing is that the industry is shifting rapidly right now. The Courier, we happen to, since we're partly because we're a local paper and partly because I think there's an emphasis on it. We do still print papers, but that's less and less common. And we are well into our phase of trying to figure out how to migrate our readership onto our website, basically. And we also have an e-edition, so looks exactly like the paper, but you read it on your tablet or your phone or whatever. So there's that change, and that change has been going on for more than a decade already. There's many other changes too. There's the way that we think about the way that we consume news is completely different than it was 5 years ago and before then. The way that the way that younger people are thinking, like, what is a news story? like what, how do I get it? Where do I get it? Where do I get information that's useful or interesting to me? All that stuff is in flux. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, overall, it's not. It just is the way that the world is changing. But for someone who's learning the craft of writing informed and, as objective as possible and like ethical journalism, it would be a difficult thing to do in school now compared to when I was in college. I would say you knew the boundaries of what a news story was very different, 15 years ago or whatever. So again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that you will require a pretty open mind, I would say, and you'd want to have to. It will be different from the time you enter college to the time you leave college. It will be different. So the other thing is that if you are interested in a 9 to 5, every day is pretty much the same. This isn't really the right spot. It's like I said, I do enjoy having a different day every day, but also it can be very taxing, obviously. You are, as an editor and really as a writer too, a reporter or someone who's maybe designing news pages or designing websites for newspapers or for different publications, you're always working under deadline. So there's a certain time when everything's got to be done no matter what. Wrenches can get thrown in that, like a very huge breaking thing might happen late in the day that you have to cover. You have to put it in your publication or on your website, but you had already done all this other stuff, so you got to shift gears at 8 p.m. or something. There's that part of it, and also just your schedule will fluctuate a lot. It's long hours, and it is not the most lucrative possible career. That's not if you're looking for that, you wouldn't probably want to do journalism. Right. Some people have been able to make, anybody can make, with dedication and talent, you can make a career in journalism for sure. But yeah, it's a job that you would do just because you have a passion for writing, and also a passion, I think, especially today, for providing useful and ethical information to people. Right. Because there's a lot of ways to get information now, but not all of it. It gets harder and harder to kind of sift through what you should probably trust and what is probably something that's good to consume versus not. So,
right.
Yeah.
I think you also bring up a good point that there is a lot more to journalism than just the editors and the writers.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, the people who are creating the web pages, the people who are designing the literal paper. I'm sure there's just so many other people that if someone even didn't love writing per se, that person could still end up in the journalism industry, just in a different aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. There's at every level, really, there's advertising. That's still the basic journalism model, whether it's on the web or in print, is that a lot of the pages are supported by ads that local businesses or bigger businesses, depending on, again, the scale you're working at, will put in. So it goes from sales to literally working on the print press to website management type things, digital design. We have graphic designers here, and to then the more, when you think about a newspaper, the traditional writing, editing stuff too. So yeah, and then that's just our operation. There are the newer things like the blogs and the websites and stuff online. Some that operate mostly through social media too. It looks a lot different, obviously, but yeah, it's a pretty huge industry in terms of different ways and different things to do.
Do you have any writing or projects that you're working on right now personally as a writer, or anything that you're especially proud of having created in the past, or anything like that?
Yeah, at the moment it's hard to find time to do anything outside of this, but I always do. Yeah. I haven't abandoned the idea of the sort of the larger creative projects that I've had. Some of them have stayed with me since grad school. Um, I just kind of went a little I didn't devote myself to getting them finished and published at the time, so they're still lingering with me. But I do try to work on them a little bit each week. Um, it's tough with anyone, whether you're a journalist or whatever you are, and you also want to write personal projects on your own time. It takes a lot of discipline and a lot of desire to do that. It's you really have to kind of, some days you need to force yourself to get up early or whatever, and put a little energy into that before you start the rest of the day. So I struggle with it quite a bit. But I do, it is important to me, and it's fulfilling stuff. Again, whether you get into, if you just enjoy writing and you someday come up with an idea for a book, a memoir, or you love to write poems and you want to try to publish them, it just takes discipline, but anybody can work it in. I published some short stories back when I was in grad school yet. Still working on, I have a couple of book length projects that are not anywhere near halfway finished, but I still hope to find a way to kind of work it in to the day. So,
Sounds awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
When those are published, let me know. I would like to pick those up and read them. That'd be very
Well, thank
cool.
you for the use of when, but yes, I appreciate it. Yeah.
As you look at your career journey, your life, etc., is there anything that you know now about life or careers that you wish you had known when you were in high school?
If paying as much attention to the people around you that have gone through it before, who have gone to college and have gotten careers, and any advice they have is extremely valuable. I think I could have used maybe a little bit more once I got into college. I in a lot of, like, the time that I spent doing creative writing, grad school, and teaching, I loved. Of course, now the things that I'm doing are very different day to day. I mean, I didn't actually need necessarily both of those master's degrees. I don't regret doing them. Like I said, I got to work on writing. That's kind of the big benefit of that Master of Fine Arts, whether you're doing writing or you're making sculptures, the Master of Fine Arts degree, if you happen to look into that. The thing, what that's for is for you to become a better artist or a better creator of some kind of thing. You don't want to think of that as an obvious conduit to a career. That's the part that took me a pretty long time to kind of internalize and then deal with, was that, yeah, I think I'm not a bad writer, but even so, there will need to be kind of a professionalization that you go through as someone who's really interested in creative, artistic stuff coming out of high school and college. So I would say I need all the advice that you can possibly get. You want to actually listen to it, and you want to seek it out. I wish I had sought more out from people who were like me, I guess, at the time. Neither of my parents went to four-year schools, so they just have been incredibly supportive of whatever I want to do. None of us really quite knew what it was to go to liberal arts school like Wittenberg, and then how to translate that. So it just took me a lot of time to kind of figure out, okay, so you have to figure out, at some point, you professionalize yourself, you pick some path that you can support yourself with, and then you figure out time on the side to do the things, artistic endeavors you want to do. But now you can teach creative writing, you can teach art. There's a lot of other different ways to do it. My way is just one of many possible ways to kind of carve a path. But yeah, I would say seeking out the advice of people that had gone through a path that I was looking at is what I would want to go back. If I go back, that's what I would do.
Right. Bret, very good advice. Thank you very much for sharing about your career. And I read the paper every day and
Well,
enjoy
thank you.
reading that and seeing what is happening in our community, because again, that is, the only one of the few ways that we can see all of that. So I
Mhm.
appreciate all that you're doing. I appreciate sharing everything with us today, and wish you good luck as you continue on your career journey.
Thanks so much, Mr. Broad, and yeah, thank you for having me. It's always fun to talk.
Thank you for making the Joust About Careers podcast part of your day. I hope you learned valuable information from this career story. And to be sure you don't miss upcoming episodes, please click subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for spending a portion of your day with us. And as always, come back next week to learn even more just about careers.